this story isn't just about a party. It's about what a young music producer named Carlos witnessed, something he still can't fully explain. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to attend one of Diddy's exclusive parties nearly destroyed him. What he saw that night? Well, it's the kind of thing that changes a person. It changed him forever. Carlos had been hustling for years, trying to get his break in the music industry. He'd been working with a few underground artists, producing tracks in his makeshift studio apartment, but nothing had really popped off for him yet. One night, as he was going through his emails, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a DM from someone big in the industry, someone connected to Diddy's camp. He stared at his phone in disbelief. Could this be real? The message was brief but to the point. You're invited to an exclusive party this weekend. Diddy will be there. It's your chance. Carlos could hardly contain his excitement. He knew that getting into one of Diddy's parties wasn't just a matter of being on the guest list. It was a rare opportunity to rub shoulders with some of the biggest names in the business. This could be his shot to make a connection, maybe even land a deal that could skyrocket his career. But he had also heard the rumors, the whispers about how those parties weren't like anything you'd see in Hollywood movies or on TV. They were different, dark. People talked about strange rituals, the kind of things that went far beyond just partying and networking. Carlos brushed it off, thinking it was just industry paranoia. He was too hungry for success to care about ghost stories. The instructions were simple. Show up at midnight. Come alone. The location was a massive mansion in the Hollywood Hills, and from the address, Carlos could tell it was in the wealthiest part of town. The night of the party came quickly, and Carlos couldn't shake a growing sense of unease as he drove up the winding road to the mansion. His palms were sweaty on the steering wheel, and the closer he got to the address, the more isolated the surroundings became. Tall, thick trees lined the road, their branches creating eerie shadows under the moonlight. When he finally arrived, the mansion loomed before him, grand and imposing. It was bigger than any house he had ever seen, with tall iron gates guarding the entrance. As soon as his car pulled up, the gates opened slowly, almost as if they'd been expecting him. He parked, took a deep breath, and made his way to the front door. A man in a black suit opened it before Carlos could even knock. The man's face was expressionless, and his eyes were cold, like he wasn't really there. Without a word, the man stepped aside, allowing Carlos to enter. Inside, the party was already in full swing. The music thumped loudly, the kind of bass-heavy beats that vibrated through your chest. The room was filled with celebrities, famous rappers, producers, actors, and models. But something about the atmosphere felt wrong. The lighting was dim, casting strange shadows that seemed to stretch and twist along the walls. The guests were smiling, laughing, drinking, but their eyes looked hollow, unfocused. Carlos tried to ignore the unsettling vibe and focus on why he was here. He began making small talk with a few people, introducing himself as a music producer, dropping hints that he was ready to collaborate. But no one seemed to be paying attention. Instead, they just kept glancing at the back of the room, where a guarded door stood, slightly ajar. That's when a woman approached him. She was stunning, dressed in a sleek all-black outfit, her features sharp and her gaze intense. Without saying a word, she handed Carlos a glass of champagne and leaned in close. "You've been selected," she whispered, her breath cold against his ear. Carlos blinked, confused. Selected for what? The woman didn't answer. She just gave him a chilling smile and pointed toward the guarded door. "Go." Carlos hesitated for a moment, but curiosity got the better of him. This was Diddy's party, right? How bad could it be? He made his way toward the door, and to his surprise, the guard stepped aside, allowing him through without a word. Beyond the door was a narrow candlelit hallway. The music from the party faded into the background as Carlos walked deeper inside, and in its place, he heard something else. Chanting. Low, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. His heart began to race, but he couldn't stop now. He had to see what was going on. At the end of the hallway, he pushed open a large, heavy wooden door and stepped into a room unlike anything he had ever seen. The room was massive, dimly lit by dozens of flickering candles. In the center stood a stone altar, and around it were several people, all dressed in black robes with their hoods pulled up. They were chanting in a language Carlos didn't recognize, their voices rising and falling in unison. And on the altar was a black goat, tied down with thick ropes. Its eyes were wide with panic, and it struggled against its restraints, but there was no escaping what was about to happen. Carlos froze in place, his heart pounding in his chest. This couldn't be real. This wasn't just a party, it was a ritual. One of the robed figures stepped forward, holding a large curved knife. The chanting grew louder, more frantic, as the figure raised the blade high into the air. In one swift motion, the knife came down. Blood spilled across the altar, and the chanting reached a fever pitch. Carlos wanted to scream, to run, but he couldn't move. His body felt like it was locked in place, his eyes glued to the horrifying scene in front of him. As the goat's blood pooled on the stone, something even more terrifying happened. The shadows on the walls began to shift and move, like they had a life of their own. The air in the room grew thick and heavy, almost suffocating, and the chanting took on a darker, more guttural tone. Carlos felt a cold hand on his shoulder. He whipped around, but no one was there. Just when he thought he couldn't take anymore, one of the robed figures stepped forward, pulling back her hood. Carlos's blood ran cold. It was Oprah Winfrey. Her face was calm, emotionless, as if she had done this countless times before. She looked directly at Carlos, her eyes locking onto his. There was no warmth in her gaze, no sign of the woman he'd seen on TV for years. Instead, there was something dark, something ancient and malevolent. "You weren't supposed to see this," Oprah said softly, her voice carrying an eerie calm. Carlos tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but no words came out. His throat was dry, his body trembling with fear. Oprah took a step toward him, her eyes never leaving his. "This world you want to be part of, it's not what you think," she continued. "There's a price for everything, Carlos. And now that you've seen this, there's no going back." Carlos didn't wait to find out what she meant. His survival instincts kicked in, and he bolted for the door, sprinting down the candlelit hallway, his heart pounding in his chest. He could still hear the chanting behind him, louder now, almost deafening. He burst through the door back into the party, but something was wrong. The music had stopped. The guests were still there, but they weren't dancing or laughing anymore. They were all staring at him, their eyes cold and empty, like they were waiting for something. Carlos didn't stop. He ran through the mansion, out the front door and into the night. He didn't even bother getting into his car. He just kept running, his mind racing with the horror of what he had seen. Carlos disappeared from the music industry after that night. He stopped producing, stopped attending events, and cut off contact with everyone he knew. I don't blame him. When he told me what happened, I could see the fear in his eyes. It wasn't just the goat sacrifice or the chanting that haunted him. It was the fact that someone like Oprah, someone the world sees as a beacon of light, was part of something so dark. He still hears the chanting sometimes, especially late at night when he's alone. And when he does, he knows that somewhere out there they're still watching him. Maya was an up-and-coming dancer, working on music videos and live performances. She had just caught a big break, being cast as one of Jennifer Lopez's background dancers. It was a dream come true, her first real taste of the big leagues. One night after a major performance, someone from Diddy's team approached her. "Diddy's throwing a party tonight," they said. "You're invited." Maya had heard about Diddy's legendary parties, everyone had. She knew if she could just get in, it could open doors. The right people would be there, people who could change her life. This was exactly the break she needed. Without a second thought, Maya accepted the invite. The location? A sprawling mansion just outside Los Angeles. The kind of place only a select few would ever see. The party was unlike anything Maya had ever seen, packed with the biggest names in the industry, musicians, actors, producers, models. The mansion itself was massive, with gold accents, fine art, and expensive furniture everywhere. The lighting was low, casting an almost eerie glow over everything. And she walked through the crowd trying to take it all in, but there was something about the atmosphere that felt strange. It wasn't just the luxury. It was too perfect, like a carefully constructed illusion. People were laughing, drinking, dancing, but there was an undercurrent to it all. Maya could feel it, like everyone was pretending to have a good time, but something darker was lurking just beneath the surface. She tried not to think too much of it. This was Diddy's world, she reminded herself. It was supposed to be over the top. Right? Hours passed and the party showed no signs of slowing down. In fact, it was getting more intense. People were disappearing into rooms and coming back out. Different. Maya noticed but didn't say anything. At one point, someone grabbed her hand, gently but firmly, and pulled her into a room upstairs. She didn't recognize them. Just another guest, or so she thought. The room was smaller, darker, with heavy curtains drawn tight. The music was muffled here, and it felt like a completely different world inside. In the center was a large circular table. Around it sat several people in expensive clothes, their faces hidden in the shadows. They didn't acknowledge her, like they were waiting for something. One of them, a man in a sharp suit, leaned over and whispered in her ear, "The party doesn't really begin until after midnight." Maya's skin crawled. She felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to leave, but the door she'd come through was already closed. The air felt thick, oppressive, like the walls were closing in around her. That was the last clear memory Maya had of the night. She would later tell her friends that she didn't remember much after that. Flashes of dark hallways, strange laughter, faces she didn't recognize. At one point, she thought she saw Diddy himself, standing at the top of a grand staircase, just watching everything, his expression unreadable. He didn't speak. He just watched. When she came back to her senses, it wasn't the same night. It was 3 days later. Maya woke up in a room she didn't recognize. The curtains were drawn and dim light seeped through. Her head pounded. Her body ached, like she had been moving for hours. But she didn't remember dancing. She stumbled out of bed, heart racing as she realized she wasn't alone. Others were passed out in the room, some on the floor, some on couches, all in various stages of exhaustion or unconsciousness. Her phone was dead. When she finally plugged it in, the date sent chills down her spine. 3 days had passed since the party. Maya left the mansion in a daze. She didn't speak to anyone as she walked out. No one stopped her. No one even seemed to notice. When she got home, her friends and family were worried sick. No one had been able to reach her. Her manager had been calling non-stop, but Maya couldn't explain what had happened. She didn't know where she had been, or why she couldn't remember. In the days that followed, she tried to return to dancing, but something inside her had changed. She felt disconnected from her body, like it wasn't hers anymore. The energy, the passion she once had, was gone. Every time she stepped into the studio, it felt like she was being watched, not by her fellow dancers or the choreographer, but by something else, something unseen. A few weeks later, she stopped showing up to rehearsals altogether. Whatever had happened at that party had taken her passion. It had stolen more than just her time. It had stolen her. Months passed and Maya kept a low profile. She didn't speak to anyone about that night, except for one close friend from the industry. Her friend tried to comfort her, but there was only so much they could do. One night, her friend asked if she'd seen Diddy since the party. Maya shook her head. "No, but I feel like he's still watching me." Her friend's face paled. "What do you mean?" Maya explained how sometimes when she was alone in her apartment, she felt this overwhelming sense of being watched. Shadows would move in the corners of her vision. Some nights, she'd wake up in the middle of the night, sure that someone was standing at the foot of her bed, just watching. Her friend didn't say anything. What could they say? The feeling wasn't going away. Maya never danced again. Whatever happened at Diddy's party, whatever she saw in those missing days, broke something inside her. The vibrant, passionate dancer she once was had been replaced by someone hollow, someone haunted by a darkness no one else could see. She tried to move on, but those memories, those fragments of time she couldn't explain, continued to haunt her. And to this day, she can't walk past a mirror without glancing over her shoulder, terrified she'll see someone, or something, standing behind her. Because some invitations come with a price, and she learned that the hard way. It was the kind of party only Diddy could throw. Exclusive, glamorous, and shrouded in mystery, his parties were whispered about in the industry as more than just a celebration of wealth and power. There was something else, something darker, that always lingered just beneath the surface. Cassie Ventura had heard the stories about Diddy's parties before she ever stepped foot into one. They were the stuff of legends, where dreams could come true overnight, or spiral into something more nightmarish. She'd been a rising star, her beauty and voice catching the attention of a few key people in the music business. But it wasn't enough. No matter how much talent she had, Cassie knew that true success in this industry required more than a voice and a pretty face. It required connections. And there was no bigger connection than Diddy. She received the invitation one summer evening, an ornate black card embossed with gold lettering. The address was for a private mansion in the hills, and the instructions were simple: show up at midnight, alone. She felt a chill run down her spine as she read it, a mixture of excitement and fear bubbling up inside her. Everyone knew about Diddy's parties, but not everyone got an invite. The unspoken truth was that these parties weren't just about business. They were something else. Cassie had always been drawn to the mysterious, but nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to encounter. The mansion stood high above Los Angeles, hidden behind iron gates and thick, sprawling trees. It loomed in the darkness like something out of a Gothic tale, its windows glowing faintly from the inside. Cassie stepped out of the sleek black car that had picked her up at the bottom of the hill, feeling a strange pull as she approached the entrance. The night air was thick, almost suffocating, and the closer she got to the mansion, the more it felt like something was watching her. As she walked up the stone steps to the front door, she noticed the silence. Even the usual hum of the city seemed to stop at the gates, leaving only the sound of her heels clicking against the stone. She hesitated for a moment before reaching for the door, but it swung open before she could touch it. A man in a sleek black suit stood inside, his face blank and his eyes cold. "Miss Ventura, welcome. Mr. Combs has been expecting you," he said, his voice unnervingly smooth. Cassie felt a chill at his words. Expecting her? She hadn't even confirmed she was coming. But before she could question it, the man stepped aside, and she was ushered inside. The mansion's interior was even more unsettling. The rooms were dimly lit, casting long shadows across the expensive furniture and strange artwork that lined the walls. People were everywhere, but none of them seemed to notice her. They were dressed in designer clothes, sipping champagne, laughing, but their eyes were distant, glazed over, as if they were there, but not fully present. Cassie felt like an outsider, like she had stepped into a world she didn't belong to. But then she saw him. Diddy stood at the far end of the room, his back to her, surrounded by a few of the industry's most powerful faces. His presence dominated the space, even from a distance. When he turned and their eyes met, it felt like the room fell away, leaving only the two of them. Diddy's eyes were intense, sharp, and piercing. Cassie felt exposed, as if he could see right through her. He smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that sent a shiver down her spine. "Cassie," he said, his voice smooth and low, "I've been waiting for you." She tried to speak, to say something clever or at least normal, but the words wouldn't come. There was something about him, something dark, magnetic, that made her feel both drawn to him and terrified at the same time. Diddy walked toward her, his movements slow and deliberate, like a predator stalking its prey. The crowd seemed to part for him without a word, as if they were all under his control. When he reached her, he took her hand, his grip firm but cold. "I've heard a lot about you," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "But this is your moment, isn't it?" Cassie nodded, barely able to think. Her heart was racing, her skin tingling with fear and anticipation. I guess so." Diddy's smile widened, but it wasn't a comforting smile. There was something predatory about it, something that made her feel like she was standing at the edge of a very dark place. "You have potential, Cassie, but in this world you have to be willing to give something to get something." She swallowed hard, her throat dry. "What do you mean?" Diddy leaned in close, his breath cold against her skin. "There are rules in this game, Cassie, rules you can't break. But once you're in forever." Cassie's stomach twisted. Something about his words didn't feel right. It was as if he was offering her something far more dangerous than a record deal. She pulled back slightly, but Diddy's grip tightened on her hand. "I can make you a star," he whispered. "I can give you everything you've ever dreamed of, but it comes at a price." She looked into his eyes and saw something dark lurking behind them, something ancient and hungry. I don't understand," she stammered. Diddy's smile faded, his expression turning cold. "You will." As the night wore on, the party grew stranger. The music thumped through the mansion, but the faces around her began to blur. Cassie wandered from room to room, her heart pounding, feeling more and more like she was trapped in some kind of twisted maze. Everywhere she turned, Diddy was there, watching, waiting, his eyes never leaving her. At one point, she found herself alone in a dark hallway, the sounds of the party fading behind her. Her footsteps echoed against the marble floors as she wandered deeper into the mansion, her mind spinning with confusion and fear. Something was wrong, she could feel it. And then she heard it, a faint whisper like a voice calling her name from the shadows. She turned, her heart racing, but the hallway was empty. "Cassie!" The voice was soft, eerie, as if it were coming from deep within the walls. She backed away, fear clawing at her chest, but the whisper grew louder, closer. Her breath hitched as she turned to run, but she found herself face to face with a mirror. In the reflection, she saw herself, only it wasn't just her. Behind her, looming in the shadows, was Diddy, but his face wasn't human anymore. His eyes were dark, hollow voids, and his smile had twisted into something monstrous. And behind him, standing in the shadows, were the others, people she didn't recognize, their faces pale and empty, as if they had been drained of life. She gasped, spinning around, but the hallway was empty again. "Miss everything," the whisper echoed in her ears. Cassie felt her knees go weak. The realization hit her like a wave of ice. This wasn't just a party. This was a trap. She wasn't just the guest. She was the sacrifice. She was Miss Everything, and there was no way out.